Welcome back, everyone. I think that I'm live. Let me know again, please, if everything is working well. I'm getting more and more used to the whole streaming process, but yeah, still let me know if everything works. Stream is getting more and more late. Yeah, today I didn't manage 6 p.m. That was only yesterday, but I still hope it's not too late for you to stick around for a little bit. So yeah. And today, again, guys, we're gonna have a look at a couple of the games of the Prague Masters, which is still ongoing. So everything is working well. That's great. Thank you, and welcome back to the stream, somebody guy. So yeah, everything is working well. That's good. So the games of the Prague Masters are still ongoing. Some of them. When will the Prague Masters end? So today is the round 5. Tomorrow is a rest day, and then there will be 4 more rounds. So it's 9 rounds as usual. I think. Let me think. When is the last round? So on Tuesday, round 6, 7, 8, 9. So on Friday, it should be the last day. Friday should be the last day. Hi, Parka. Welcome to the stream. Hi, Jeremy. Welcome, everyone. So we have a couple of consecutive streams now. It has been, I think, the 3rd time streaming in the last couple of days. Let me know what you think about more regular streams, especially now that the Prague Masters is ongoing. I think it's interesting to talk about that tournament. Hi, Peter. Welcome to the stream. I'm glad you made it. Great to see you back in the chat. So I would suggest we jump into some of the games. Let me just set things up. Friday, so I can join once for the whole stream. Nice. Yeah. Let's see if next Friday I'll transmit the games. Usually on the last day they start the games a bit earlier, sometime in the morning, 10, 11, 12. So let's see. Weekly or monthly streams are considerable. Yeah. I probably won't be able to keep it up to have daily streams like people like Hikaru do. But for now, I'm in Vienna and I'm not playing any tournaments, at least for now. Of course, in 2 weeks I'll be traveling to the European Individual Championship, but before that I'm at least not playing anything or anywhere. So I'm just gonna set up the leeches. So let's jump right into it. Again, I hope that you'll be able to see most of it okay. I'm just gonna work on everything a little bit to make it better for you. All right. Let me just adjust that a little bit more. Somebody guy, you're already leaving. Well, I'm assuming it's already quite late where you are. So good night, man. And I hope you'll be back in the following streams. It was great to have you here for at least a couple of minutes. Did Prague win? We're gonna go there right away. He's still playing against Aravind. So today we're having the Indian battle, basically. Today is the Indian battle. Are you seconding someone playing? Yes, I am, but I did not yet reveal that. So did not reveal that just yet. And meanwhile, I'm very sorry that it's taking some time for me to adjust it. Again, I'm still getting used to all of the OBS stuff. It's not that easy for me to do that. Aha, so that was the issue. All right, now it should be working quite well. So I hope this is fine for now, at least the way it's looking now. Let me just adjust my camera a little bit, and then we'll be good to go. All right. Yes, I'm seconding someone in the tournament. Yeah, who do you think it is, guys? Give me a couple of guesses. But I'm helping someone in the tournament. By the way, it's maybe Masters or Challengers. Who knows? Hi, Angel. Welcome back. Do you second for non-super GMs? Well, if you define super GMs by the term 2700, then yes, I am. But usually seconding kind of is meant for elite players. Otherwise, I would consider it coaching. So yeah. That's how it is. But I do very much enjoy it. I love helping people with their chess and in general. So yeah, 2700. Yeah. Well, I did work for, or I am still sometimes working for Pentala Hare Krishna, Indian Super Grandmaster. So this is the only Super Grandmaster I did second for. So welcome everyone to the stream. I'm not sure if I'm gonna play viewers today in the stream. I think we'll just have a look at the games of Prague Masters. Mandar, welcome to the stream. I'm doing very well, thank you. Hope you're also having a lovely Sunday as well. So let's jump right into it. Someone already said he wants to see what happens in Prague's game against Aravind. So maybe we're gonna start with that first. So Prague and Aravind both are leading the tournament. So that game is quite important for the overall tournament standings as well. And the game started, so Prague has white pieces. Game started by e4. Just gonna adjust it one last time that I can see you guys, that I can see the chat. So yeah, now it is perfect. Now it's perfect. Let me know, guys, if the overall setup is all right. I hope it is. I hope it's all good. One plus zero, I'm not fast enough for that. I very rarely play bullet overall. If I do play some online, it's mostly 3 plus 0. I haven't played bullet in quite a long time. So in that game, Prague played e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. By the way, as I said in yesterday's stream, I heard the rumor that Aravind was working for Pragnananda in the candidates tournament. So they probably have, well, they know each other for sure quite well since they play for the same country, and I think they're also from the same region. So they most likely know each other pretty well. So bishop b5 was played, knight f6, and we have the Berlin in front of us, which is a little bit surprising to me since Aravind, I don't think goes for the Berlin that often. But we have short castle. So Pragnananda goes to this very solid line with rook e1, which is also a bit surprising to me. Usually he goes for d3 as far as I know, the so-called anti-Berlin. I think they even share the coach, yeah, which should be Ramesh, the very famous Indian coach, who is, I think, both of their, he's the mentor of both of them. I think you're right with that. Very famous and very accomplished and good coach from India, Grandmaster Ramesh, who also wrote, by the way, a very nice book about calculation, which I also bought and can highly recommend. Yeah, they're from the same state. Yeah, that's also what I heard. My next tournament is the European Individual in Romania. It's gonna start in 2 weeks. So yeah, that will be my next event. So we have this line with rook e1, knight d6, and in general, these positions tend to be quite, quite boring. drawish, since just the pawn structure is completely symmetrical, and often there's not that much happening here. Knight takes e5, which is by far the best move. Well, that's maybe a bit of an overstatement, but if black starts with castle, then it does allow white to go back knight f3, and then black keeps this knight on c6, which doesn't do that much in most cases, because white can just solidify the center with c3, and then mostly black anyway has to regroup this knight somewhere to e7 and g6. So black mostly likes to take on e5. Is your goal for the European individual to get a spot for the World Cup? Yeah, for sure it is. It's going to be very hard. I just checked the starting list, and I think on the 80th seed or something like that, 80, 85, something like that. So the tournament is really strong, which somehow I didn't expect that it would be so strong, since already quite a few players have secured the ticket for the World Cup, since they played in the previous European Championship. But I guess I was kind of wrong with that. So it's going to be super strong European Championship as usual. Knight takes e5, rook takes e5, short castle d4. So we're following basically the big main line here, c3, rook e1, queen e1. Instead of c3, white has tried this line in the past with bishop f4, takes, and now knight e8 is supposed to be the best move. Typical regrouping for black to get d5 on the next move. If bishop takes d4, that does allow bishop takes d6. And if c takes d6, c3, white perhaps keeps some small advantage, because black's pawn structure is quite bad, and white will most likely regain one of these pawns, and then black will be stuck with this isolated pawn. Also, the bishop on c8 takes quite a long time to see the light of day. So therefore, after queen takes e1, black usually goes knight e8, and then there is this nice try for white with knight c3 if white wants to go for a more aggressive approach in the Berlin. And this line is actually quite dangerous. I think that many Berlin players are somewhat afraid of this, because black does need to know quite a lot of theory. Of course, white does too, but things tend to get very sharp here. Because now d5 doesn't work because of knight takes d5. That's the main point, and black cannot take because queen takes e8 is checkmate. And therefore, the main line continues. Bishop takes d4, knight d5, d6, and then all sort of madness ensues. I think bishop g5 is the main move, f6, and so on. Bishop h4 is a move. Bishop f4, I think, also is a move back, or bishop e3. So yeah, there's a lot of theory there. But if you're looking for a more aggressive approach in the Berlin, I would definitely recommend you to have a look at this. How do you prepare before tournament? Just curious. It honestly depends on my general schedule. Sometimes I have tournaments where I simply don't have time to prepare anything because I'm just busy with other things. But this European Championship I want to take is especially serious, since it's kind of my last chance to qualify for the World Cup. And yeah, so I want to do some, well, mostly opening preparation. I will also want to have a look at some examples to improve my overall calculation and just get in the mood to fight, basically. Speaking of tournaments, what do you bring to the table food-wise? I need ideas so I don't starve. I assume you mean while you're playing the game, right? So what do I bring to the games? Recently, actually not so much. When I was younger, I usually brought like a muesli bar or something like that. But recently, maybe a banana, maybe some dark chocolate, perhaps a little bit of a couple of nuts. That's basically it. I try not to eat that much during the game. Just try to have a healthy diet, especially before the game. Usually after the game, I'm okay by enjoying a slice of cake or some cookies. But before the game, I think it's advisable to not eat a lot of junk, basically. From my experience, it kind of interferes with my play then if I'm eating a lot of sugar or some things like that before the game. Yeah, so some banana, nuts, things like that. Greetings from Turkey. Greetings back to Turkey. We're gonna go to Edis Gurel's game in a short time, so stay tuned for that. Which coach do you think had the most impact on your chess career? I would say it's my first coach, an international master from Vienna, Austria, who started coaching me when I was still 5 years old. And I worked with him for almost 8 years, I think. And he had a very big impact on me. His name is Harald Schneider-Zinner. He's an international master. Very, very good coach. So I think very highly of him. Always bring chocolate bars. Yeah, chocolate bars are nice too, but you have to be careful not to spike your sugar too much during games. So it should be some sort of more healthy chocolate bar. Do you work with the coach yourself or work on your own chess independently? Well, Austria does have a national coach, which currently is Grandmaster Markus Raga, former 2700 Super Grandmaster. And I do have lessons with him sometimes, but mostly I work on my on my chess by my own. So yeah. What's your take on mental coach? Very good idea. Especially in chess, you need, well, you simply cannot forget about the mental aspect. So I think that would be something for anyone who is trying to up their game to work on the mental aspect. That's quite important. So here in that game, not that much was happening. Typical play for the Berlin. Usually black brings this knight to e8 and then to g7. Brings his bishop out to f5, which also happened in the game. And yeah, quite a boring position overall. If someone has an advantage, it's usually white because arguably he has the better bishop. But there's simply not that much happening overall. And even he went to exchange the bishop, so now it should be just quite a simple draw. Even though I'm a bit surprised that the game still had his own. Had some more complications. So he gave the pawn on b7, but regains it on b2, knight c6. White is currently a pawn up, but black is very active. Also, pawn on g2 is a long-term target. So white can never take on d5 because of knight e3. Well, he could, but yeah, then black will all of a sudden have a lot of counterplay. What's the difference between a 2600 and 2800? Well, a 2600 can already play chess on an absolutely exceptional level. And a 2800 is just not a human anymore, basically. Like if you look at Magnus's or Fabiano's game, well, of course they do blunder, but it happens like in 1 out of 100 games, maybe even more than that. So just the level of preparation is completely different in most cases. That's basically it. And of course, experience, calculation, and so on. Knight e3, rook g5. Yeah, that's a good idea. I didn't see that. Now he's protecting the pawn on g2. Not a human anymore. Well, if you look at Magnus and Fabiano, for example, I mean, there were, of course, many other 2800s. Not many others, but a few of them. And their level of play is just incomprehensible for a person like me in many cases. So yeah, rook g5 is definitely a move. And now I would guess rook c2 followed by rook takes c3. White, of course, doesn't lose the pawn on g2 just yet. But he is stuck with this weakness for quite a long time. And will take on c3 in the next move. And we'll have still very decent compensation for the pawn. So knight b4, knight takes d4. Now if c takes d4, there's rook b4 with a draw on rook endgame. So knight d3, rook d2, and yeah, looks like the game is heading towards the draw, even though white is still a pawn up here. But yeah, I guess that Aravind will hold this quite comfortably. And yeah, white is still a pawn up, but both of these are on the rim of the board. So even if this pawn is on g3, it should be quite a simple draw overall. So that game's probably going to end in a draw. We do have Le Quang against Keimer, and they are approaching the time control, so we can stick with that for now. Looks like perhaps another draw, but for now Vincent is a pawn up and has the more active rooks. So welcome, Vigilant Kid. Welcome to the chat. Hope you enjoy the stream. Like Gukesh, Prague, Hikaru, Carlsen are in different league altogether. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. of course, Hikaru as well. I didn't mention him, but yeah, this is just a level of chess which is out of this world, basically. I've heard some people say normally the maximum rating someone with normal intelligence can reach is around 2,000 to 2,100. Do you think that's true? Honestly, this is quite an interesting topic. I guess you could say that in most cases, people that play chess well also do have some sort of intellectual abilities, but I wouldn't say that's always the case. Like it also depends on how you define intelligence. Like if it's purely about calculation abilities and that stuff, then maybe. But I personally define intelligence also like when it comes to emotional intelligence and being able just to live a normal life basically by your own, that you can survive alone in your household, that you're able to do laundry and that you're able to cook and things like that. I'm not entirely sure that applies to all super grandmasters. Like even Magnus's wife said in one interview that those things which you have to do in the household are not, like those chores in the household are not specifically Magnus's strong suit. But of course, Magnus overall is I would say a very intelligent person. Like, of course, even his abilities to remember all sorts of things. Like his memory is most likely one of the best when it comes to chess players. Why is no one commenting the FIDE World Junior Chess Championship 2025? Great question. It's usually I think they're not commenting the youth events, which is a little bit of a pity. The other question is, yeah, are that many people watching it? The Junior Championship, of course, is it becomes even more and more of a strong event. Like most players that win the Junior World Championship will also become a super grandmaster, or at least will be in the world elite. Like if you look at the previous winners, so it is a pity, but you also always have to think that organizers have to pay the commentators, and often there's simply not enough money for that. That's just how it is. Carlsen often struggles against 2500s. Well, he doesn't really play them that often, I would say. But if you look at some online games where he plays against 2600s, he's usually crushing them, also in World Rapid and Blitzes. But in Classical, simply top players are not playing against 2600s that often. So yeah. Yeah, that game, so black is a pawn up, but maybe we can look on how we reached there. So that was a Rui Lopez. Le Quang Diem, of course, super grandmaster from Vietnam, and Vincent Keimer also needs no introduction, super grandmaster from Germany. Welcome to the stream. Welcome to the stream, Xevat. Nice to see you back as well. So a6 bishop a4, knight f6 d3, the so-called anti-Rui Lopez, basically anti-Spanish with d3, avoiding, for example, this open Spanish with knight takes e4. So many people nowadays play those systems with d3. Bishop c5, played by Vincent. Bishop takes e6, which now transposes back to the Berlin, basically, only that black has this extra move a6, which cannot be bad for sure for black, but most likely it will not make that much of a difference. Just as a reference here, if black starts with knight f6, d3, bishop c5, bishop c6, dc6, it's the same position, just that the pawn is not on a6. That was what I was referring to. So bishop c6, dc, knight d2, and now knight d7. I also play that system as well with black. The point is just to protect the pawn on e5. By the way, knight takes e5 right away would be a blunder because of queen d4, and there's the threat of queen f2 and queen e5, and black is winning therefore. So white shouldn't do that. So they play either knight d2 or short castle. In that game, Le Quang played knight d2, knight d7, knight c4, short castle. Again, white cannot take here because of the same trick as before, queen d4, and black is winning. So queen e2, rook e8, and bishop d2. So in this line, often white aims to go for short castle and then for some sort of attack on the king side, usually involving h4, h5, or g4, g5, which I think also happened later in the game. The more positional approach, of course, would be to castle short, when then often white's plans include to go king h1, followed by knight h4, knight f5, or to push for f4 at some point. In general, those positions are objectively around equal, but it's very much playable. Black does have the bishop here, which is kind of a long-term asset, but white has the better pawn structure, as it often is in the Spanish. How do you know so many lines? Just many years of experience. Keep in mind, I've been playing chess for 17 years and been working on chess seriously for around 10 years, I would say. So yeah, if you do that, a lot of information will absorb into your mind, basically, after all those years. So Le Quang went for this plan. By the way, it can be interesting for black also, therefore, to delay short castle. I think that's what I perhaps would do, to start with something like f6 and wait for white to castle, and only then to castle, just to avoid this plan. Because now if white wants to play the same, let's say queen e2, then black could also try to castle queenside even, perhaps. There is a plan like queen e7, bishop d2 and b6, followed by bishop b7, long castle. So that's what I would be thinking about here as black. But Vincent is not afraid of this at all. h4, knight f8, a very typical plan, rerouting the knight to e6 from where it can go either to f4 or to d4. h5, c5, long castle. Of course, h6 would be something to think about here, forcing black to play g6. But then, of course, it's the question if white can enter there somehow with his pieces. But h6 would be quite a typical idea. Why does Giri draw every game? Well, he's just a very solid player, and sometimes he gets a chance, and when he does, he takes it. But in this tournament so far, all of his opponents have also played very well, and therefore I think he just didn't get that many chances, and also doesn't want to risk too much as well. So Vincent played c5, long castle, played by Le Quang Liam, the first move where he started to think. So clearly c5 was not on his preparation anymore. Long castle, knight e6, and g4. f6, rook g1, and now h6. So when I first tuned in, I saw this position, and I had a look at the computer, which already argues that black is a little bit better here, which of course is for a human eye not easy to understand. But now what I didn't like for white is here that white's attack is basically came to a stop. Black fixed everything here, and as long as white doesn't have any sacrifices on h6 with one of the knights, like knight e3, knight e5, and then bishop h6 or knight h6, there's not really that much happening anymore for white. And black, on the other hand, will start pushing his pawns on the queen side quite fast. So so yeah, it might have been an idea for white to open up the position before that, or to just switch plans, knight h4, knight f5 perhaps, even though now it allows knight e4. So maybe knight e3, knight f4, but now knight f4 could be a move for black. Do you think it's more important to study theory from the black side or the white side? I would say from the black side, since when you have the white pieces, you have more flexibility overall. Like it's easier to get a bad position with black than to get a bad position with white, simply because you're a move up with white, and you can basically play almost any move on the first move, and you won't be worse. So with white, you can simply stick to one solid setup and can play that quite comfortably for a long time, I would say. With black, on the other hand, it's easier to get into trouble earlier. So I think it's more useful to study theory with black. So yeah, Vincent managed to close everything off here. Knight f5, a4, and it seems like for now none of these sacrifices work. Like, let's have a look at knight h6, gh6, bishop h6 still. white doesn't even really have a threat here. G5 perhaps could be in the air, but black is still defending that square often enough. Perhaps bishop f8 exchanging this bishop, and seems like this is not enough compensation. Bishop h6 I assume is kind of the same. King could even run over to the queen side, even though king g7 is preferred, and then king h7. And if queen e3, knight g5 works, maybe also bishop f8, I guess. Nepo is crushing Aeroflot. I didn't fully follow the results. I didn't even see the first round results. I think today was round 2, if I'm not wrong. But it's kind of a pity that the games are not being transmitted. Like, of course, I understand all of the political situation and sanctions and so on. But at the end of the day, I just want to watch chess, basically. So that's a little bit unfortunate. And I didn't see any place basically where to watch the live games. So if you guys found a link to some website where I could watch the games, I would very much appreciate it. Because simply it's such a strong tournament. Hans drew his second round. Who did he play? Did you see that? Would be nice to know. Hi, I played your opening repertoire on 1d4 and won. Thank you so much. I'm glad that you liked it and that you managed to win a game. More of those repertoires to come in the future for sure. Today was a double round in Airfield. Okay. Didn't know that. By the way, guys, also Hans will play this match against Daniel Dubov. I'm very much looking forward to that. I hope that there will be some transmissions of that. If you guys followed it, there was all of the drama in the FIDE World Blitz Championship, I think, where Dubov didn't appear to his game against Hans, and it was quite obvious that it was because of Hans's past with Magnus and with cheating overall. But now it seems like they came to an agreement and they will play a blitz match, and the loser of the blitz match has to answer one question of his opponent with a lie detector test. So I don't even know how they came to that idea. I think Dubov was the first one to suggest that idea, that he wants to ask Hans a question under the lie detector test. I'm looking forward to that. Felix, what variations openings would you recommend for 1e4 as someone who only played d4 and c4? Hard to say. I mean, if you jump into e4 quite abruptly, if you played d4, knight f3, c4 before that, it often becomes a little bit overwhelming because there are so many variations and openings to study. So it would be interesting, or I would advise you to start with some more easy lines, like against e4, e5, perhaps go for the 4 knight scotch or something like that. Not immediately to jump into the main lines with the Italian or with the Rui Lopez. So just try to find something easier for the start, and then slowly you can go to the main lines. But I'll definitely make an e4 repertoire in the near future, kind of in the same style as my previous d4 repertoire. Good evening, Vlad. Have you already announced which player you're seconding? Not yet, but I'll do so after the tournament for sure. Alexander, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm glad that you enjoyed my live streams from this tournament. Hans is nearly always at the crime scene when it comes to drama. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I kind of feel sorry for Hans. How is that? Well, yeah. What happened to him? I'm assuming you mean that he kind of ran into this whole sort of shitstorm and that many people are hating on him. I do also think that many of those things are not fair, but overall I also think that Hans kind of makes it. He's overall quite a provocative person. I would argue, who just speaks his mind, what he thinks on all of the things, which is a good thing. But simply at the end of the day, people don't like that. Yeah, if you only say what you think, people are gonna hate on you. But I totally agree that some of the things that happened to him are kind of, yeah, not okay as well. So I'm gonna go through all of your questions. before we continue. Hans is just 20, but he doesn't look like that. So yeah. Scotch doesn't have too much theory as well. Yeah, that's true. Can you recommend something for Black to fight against the London system, please? Definitely check out my video from the Bundesliga recap from December, where I kind of give a full repertoire for against the London, kind of a fighting repertoire. So definitely check that out. I released that in December. It was from my German Bundesliga weekend. Hans is going to be 22, but he does look a little older than that. Yeah. Yes. Can't blame him, of course, as well. Like what he went through over the last 2 years, that kind of does something with you. So yeah, he doesn't seem to care that much as well. Yeah, totally. Yeah, well, it's hard to say. Like Alexander, you're saying that the haters don't really seem to have affected him. Yeah, well, I guess he handled it very well overall. Like some people, like if I'm thinking about myself, I'm not sure if I could handle like so many hater messages. I'm sure he got death threats as well, and all those sorts of things. So I think you couldn't handle it much better than him. You're older than Hans, but you do look younger than him. Well, I take that as a compliment. Thank you. I met him also like a couple of times. First met him in India in 2019, where we both played the World Youth Championship. I played in under 18. He still played under 16. First met him there, and it was always quite memorable for me that whenever I saw him, basically he was always so sure that he's gonna be 2700, 2800 in just a couple of years. And back then everyone was kind of laughing at him. That didn't really include me, because I already saw that he was working a lot. But he already said back then that I'm gonna be 2700, 2800, and he did achieve that quite soon. So yeah, I am 1 year older than him. Yeah, that's true. Where can you watch my video against the London system? It's just on my YouTube channel. So it was I released it in December from the German Bundesliga recap. You'd say that you're a fan? Yeah, he does have this kind of similar backstory like Fischer somehow, that many people love him and many people hate him at the same time. By the way, another funny story about Hans, which I can now tell before we move on, is that when I was in the Prague Masters in 2022, but it's funny now that I'm telling a story about Prague Masters as well. I was there in 2022, was a second for Harikrishna Pentala, who, by the way, won that event. So that was very memorable for me. And one afternoon, I can remember, it was the free day, I believe. Free day. Hans played in the challengers section back then, and Hans and Ivan Sokolov were sitting on the rooftop. Basically, there was like some sort of bar, and Hans ordered something and was sitting there with Ivan Sokolov. Ivan Sokolov, I'm sure most of you know. Most of you know him. Very famous coach. And they were talking, and I was kind of standing next to that and just observing it. And then Hans all of a sudden said that this was in 2022, by the way, 2022. And Hans at that moment had a rating of 2620 or something like that. And he said that in the next year, he's going to be 2730. And you know what Ivan Sokolov said to him? He said, Hans, people say that you are crazy, but you exceeded my expectations. So that was a very memorable kind of anecdote I remember from being in Prague that year. Thanks, Paul, for sending the link to the Discord. So yeah, I do have a Discord server. Already many people joined there. We're all posting some chess exercises there, basically on a daily basis. So yeah, let's continue with the game. So as I said, they kind of pushed their pawns on both different sides, but Vincent kind of managed to close off the king side, which is good for black, of course. Now white's attack doesn't seem to be going anywhere that soon, even though he does perhaps try to prepare g5 now, with including some sacrifices. Bye, Angel. I hope you enjoyed the small segment of the stream. I hope to see you back in the following stream. So thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. So rook g1, knight g5. So I assume that he was afraid of some g5 action. Let's just put b4 on the board. Now it seems like g5 is a threat. So if black takes, I guess you take with the knight. And at the end of the day, white's attack seems to be quite strong here. So therefore, Vincent understandably puts his knight to g5 to just block everything off here. Knight h4, bishop e6. But yeah, now white already all of a sudden has to switch back to the defense. So he's going back with his pieces to the queen side, but still the position is sort of closed here. Yeah, very interesting what they are doing here. Rook f7. Seems like white is winning here, at least objectively. And queen takes d3. That guy's creepy. Who do you mean? You mean Sokolov? You mean Sokolov? So apparently queen takes d3 is a mistake here. Queen a7 is better with the idea of rook d7. To take with rook on d3. After takes, king e2, bishop takes e4. That seems to have been the big mistake. Ah, you meant buy in another way. Okay, well, I hope you'll stick around for a little bit longer then. Hope you're gonna still stick around for a little bit longer then. Got that the wrong way. So bishop takes e4 is apparently the mistake. Rook fd7 is better. Rook d7 is better, and white should not take here because then the pawn on a2 perhaps will drop as well. And otherwise he's preparing bishop takes e4. So in the game there take, and after rook d7 there is rook g2, which maybe he missed. And the problem is after rook d7 if he plays rook g2, apparently b4. Yeah. Oof. Is that just winning? Like if I put my knight to e3 perhaps? King f7, knight e3. The computer makes it look so completely winning, but I'm not entirely sure yet how black will break through, even though at some point there will be b3. So let's just say rook g1, yeah, even b3 is winning here. Because if the rook goes back, there's rook d2. It's gonna be a weird question, but do you like PewDiePie, just a fellow YouTuber whose first name is also Felix? I do like PewDiePie. I haven't watched him for the last couple of years, but when I grew up, like that was like 10 years ago, I watched all of his videos. So I was always a fan of PewDiePie, but haven't watched him that recently. I usually watched his gaming videos. Yeah, why is bishop takes bad? It seems like black should keep the pressure a bit longer. And also keep the option of going b4 perhaps, because now white is still stuck with this weakness on c4. I wonder what's the winning plan after b3 as well. Rook c3 is strong. And if rook b2, there's a3 and then rook c2. That's another nice point, and a2 and d2 are both hanging. Yeah, I'm glad you found the video about the London. Let me know what you think. I hope you find value in that. Do you also make content in your mother language? I don't. I released only one video in German on this channel where I promoted my German chess-based course, because I recorded my chess-based course on both German and English. But overall, I like to keep my content in English, that I can simply reach more of you guys. Is b4 hard to find? Yeah, that's a good question. Well, it is logical in some regard, but I assume that Vincent thought that that bishop takes c4 is winning. He might have missed rook g2 here, which is a nice defensive move. And now a3 takes rook f2. Again, seems like the only move to hold the balance. Because if rook c2, rook d3, rook f2, rook e3, it seems like white is dropping the pawn on f3. Have you seen that Sokolov Tadastil interview? Of course. That's a legendary one where he was completely winning against it might have been Hikaru Nakamura in one game, and then in the interview, if some of you guys don't know that video, he said, "If I don't kill myself tonight, I'm gonna live forever." That's a legendary interview. Absolutely legendary. Can you say something in German? What should I say in German? Tell me what I can say in German and I'll say it, as long as it's family friendly. What is your chessable course gonna be on? It's on the Nimzo and Rogozin for black. So I'll give you a full repertoire starting on this move, and here I'm gonna go through the moves knight f3 and knight c3. And here I'm gonna give the Rogozin, bishop b4, and after knight c3 I'm recommending the Nimzo, which are both very good openings to play together, basically, because often there are transpositions. Like, for example, after knight c3, bishop b4, knight f3, you could simply go d5 and you're back in the Rogozin. So there are many transpositions there, and I think it's nice to combine those two openings together. Liam is very good at defense. Yeah, he is. That's true. And again, it was not easy at all for Vincent to win this. So yeah, it seems like this is heading towards the draw. So let's have a look at Navarra against Edis Gorel. That was a Queen's Gambit accepted, and I think in that game not that much happened. We saw in one of the previous games this line with a6, e3, b5, being played by Aravind against Vincent Keimer, where he showed this quite interesting idea later on. Nimzo can be quite complicated. I think I tend to agree, but also disagree. I mean, some lines of the Nimzo can be complicated, but overall, I would say that it's more of a strategical positional opening. And especially the lines I'm giving, it's usually not that complicated. I try to keep it simple, as I usually do with openings, and tend to give some quite positional and easy to learn recommendations, just because I don't really like those memorization things in chess. So here, Navarra played e4, potentially sacrificing the pawn on e4. I assume after knight e4 he wants something like queen e2 or rook e1, and white is gonna win a lot of time here, so he didn't take that. b5, bishop e2, bishop e7, a4, and now he sacrificed one pawn. And in the end, white is a pawn up, it seems like. Knight e4, bishop takes b5. But black does have a lot of squares and very active pieces here. How to improve German? I had taken German as my language subject, and now I find it very confusing. What has always helped me, at least with English, is to just watch many different series and documentaries and things like that. So I guess you could do that in German as well. There are a couple of nice documentary channels on YouTube, for example. I love Austria so much. It would be cool if you said this angrily. Why should I say it angrily? I should say it proudly. Ich liebe Österreich would be I love Austria. German is so hard. I learned it, and theoretically I'm B1, but can't remember much now. Yeah, German is very hard. Yeah, especially I remember, Angel, you're from Portugal, and yeah, I'm sure the pronunciation overall is so much different. Like, I was in Portugal 1 or 2 times. I was there 2 times. And yeah, overall the pronunciation was also extremely hard for me. I have a hard time even remembering any words at all, basically, in Portuguese. Only thing I remember is the pastel de natas. Hope I pronounced that correctly. Is it good to know many openings or study one particular opening with all the variations for tournament purposes? I guess if you're just starting out or are on the amateur level, it's totally enough to know one opening quite well and just know the plans there. But once you reach like a more advanced level, like international master, perhaps even, or grandmaster, then you're gonna need more openings, simply because nowadays you cannot be predictable anymore in openings, because everyone has a computer and they will just look for some ideas to try and test you there. And we see that happening with, for example, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, who has played the Najdorf and the Grunfeld for his whole life, basically. But we saw him a couple of years ago switching to other openings, just because it became so hard to face the players who knew what they had to prepare for. So flexibility is becoming more and more important. I like Edis's position. He's that game ended in a draw. We're just going through that. So here, well, I would also say that white is not really risking anything at all, because he is a pawn up, and I would say that black is more on the defensive here, but he does have enough activity here for the pawn for sure. So he went knight c6, Navarre took, which is a bit surprising, giving up this bishop. Takes, knight d4, bishop a8, and his concrete idea was queen g4 to continue with bishop h6. Your English is very good, thank you. Thank you, cool centrist, I appreciate it. He's German, I'm not German, I'm Austrian. I'm Austrian, there's a big difference. Yeah, German is hard, yeah. German is hard. Is your Nimzo Rogozin course ambitious? I would say so. Well, I'm. If there are chances to play for a win, I'm gonna recommend it. But of course, with black, it's sometimes quite hard to avoid some drawish lines. But overall, I'm striving to give some more fighting lines. So king h8, bishop g5, exchanging that bishop, and knight f4 was his idea. So if queen takes f4, he has queen takes d4. So queen g5, queen d8, rook d8, knight d6, and king g8, protecting this pawn on f7. I didn't know you were Austrian. Yeah, I'm Austrian. I mean, there are of course many similarities between Austria and Germany, but still some differences as well, especially when it comes to language. Like it's quite interesting to look at the linguistic differences between Austria and Germany. There are quite a couple of them. Same with Switzerland. Switzerland is an even more extreme example, just because they also have Italian and French population. But the accents are quite interesting. I do like classical music. I don't listen to it that much anymore. There are some times in my life where I do listen to quite a lot of classical music, but more recently I haven't listened to much of it. my favorite is probably Chopin, so not an Austrian, but of course I'm familiar with some of the classics by Mozart, for example, but I wouldn't consider myself an expert on classical music, unfortunately. But definitely I'm striving to become more cultured when it comes to classical music in the future. Yeah, German on its own is already hard. So now imagine you have to understand an Austrian speaking German. The interesting thing is, if you're from Vienna, the German is usually quite understandable for Germans. But if you go more to the west in Austria, like for example to the border to Italy, somewhere there, people speak quite a hard dialect there. I'm learning standard German. Is it very different than Austrian German? If I know standard, people in Austria will understand. Yeah, standard German, like I think you could also call it High German, is becoming more and more important, I would say also. Like in Austrian schools, this is mostly taught, but as I said, if you move more to the west in Austria, they tend to have more of an extreme dialect. But even in Vienna, there are some words which a German might not understand always. The Viennese dialect. I am able to speak a little bit of that, but it's not really considered to be, yeah, to be good to speak that. Like I don't know how to say it, but you're kind of considered to be not less of a person, but if you speak this Viennese dialect, it kind of makes you sound uneducated. I would say, kind of like this. That's kind of the general perception of Viennese German nowadays. What's your favorite band or music artist and your favorite music genre? Nowadays, I don't even listen that much to music. While I'm working, often I listen to classical music by, for example, Hans Zimmer, who composed many pieces for movies. For example, for Interstellar, I like those tracks. For a long time, I listened to a lot of rap. Probably my favorite German rapper is called Samra, Samra, Berlin rapper. So yeah. Well, good luck with your exam, Bobby Fischer. Hard to give advice on German. I know it's hard. I know it's hard. Maybe try to watch some videos in German on YouTube. That might help. Just reached 1700 on leeches. Congrats, man. Congrats on that achievement. So Shankland against Vailly. Shankland lost with white pieces in quite a short game. And in that game, we saw again this line bishop e4 and g3, which was also played by Pragnananda against Nguyen in round 3. By the way, also Magnus played that line against Hans Niemann in their famous encounter back in St. Louis, which Hans won with the black pieces. And Vailly played short castle, bishop g2 and d5, knight f3, d takes e4, castle a3, knight c6 and a3. And the same appeared also in the game Prague against Nguyen. And Van went back bishop e7, and I think the game continued e4, and now Van went rook b8, I think. Continued something like that, bishop f4, b5, and rook e1. I think that was how the game went, where Prague won a very nice game against the Czech number 1 or number 2. I'm not sure how it is looking with the rating now between Van and Grandmaster Navarra. But in this game, Vailly decided to take on c3, b takes c3, and knight a5, which apparently is another option for black. I would be a bit scared for black to enter this, simply because after bishop g5, this pin is quite annoying, and g5 will never probably really work because white can sacrifice the piece. And again, this looks quite dangerous. f4, f5 could be an idea, or e4, e5, especially e4, e5. And looks quite bad for black. But Vailly followed it up with c5 and now e4. Shankland already started to spend a little bit of time here already for bishop g5. e4, h6, and now bishop h4. So again, g5 would probably run into takes bishop g5 when e5 will come, and black will most likely not survive this. So Vailly went for e5, which is a very strong move, according to the computer. The idea is if d takes e5, black can now trade queens and then take on e4. And then probably even collect upon on c3. And Shankland took bishop takes f6. If knight takes e5, I assume that now g5 would work, or maybe even c takes d4 first, and then g5. So yeah. Have you ever been to St. Louis? I was there once in 2023, I think, where I played in the St. Louis Spring B tournament, and actually I won the tournament. So that was one of my biggest achievements there. I won with quite a nice score. I think I scored 6.5 out of 9, against a pretty strong opposition. And I became first with, I think, a 1 point lead or something like that. So I have nice experiences from being in St. Louis. Is your Nimzo course a good way to play for a win on my level? Yeah, I am playing my courses all the time. Like also my one night of 3 course. I didn't hide anything there basically. I just recommend what I also play myself. So that's the same applies also to the Nimzo course. Yeah, thanks, Angel. That are nice memories from St. Louis. So Shankland took on f6, queen takes f6, and now played the move queen a4 immediately, which apparently is a huge blunder. Instead, he should take on e5 either with the pawn or with the knight. To me, taking with the knight seems more logical. Since d takes e5, now the pawns are quite useless here. Black can go to e7, for example, and has his own counterplay here. Knight b3 is coming, bishop e6 or bishop g4, and then rook d8. Don't really like that for white. So knight takes e5 would be more to my style when white still keeps this nice center. But also here, black seems to have quite nice play, like rook d8, for example. Pawn on d4 is quite weak. Yeah, I am sharing my preparation, yeah, at the end of the day. But at the same time, I'm also thinking that most likely most of my opponents will not have bought the course, so I'm still happy to play that. Also with the lines I'm recommending, it's not like they have some problems. Like in general, what I recommend is always playable. Like it's not like they are some gambling lines basically. Do grandmasters get paid by the government like a salary or something? In Austria, not. In Austria, that's not the case. For example, in Armenia is one of the few countries that do have a system like this. But I don't think in any European country like in any EU country it works like that. Greetings to Uruguay. Welcome to the stream. Do you think reaching 2100 FIDE is harder or reaching C2 level in German? Great question. Maybe C2 level is harder to reach. Maybe C2 level is harder to reach. So yeah, already here Valle reacted very well to this preparation by Shankland. And Shankland went for this move queen a4, which now knight b3, knight takes e5. I'm not sure, like after knight b3 he spent 6 minutes here. Like it could be that just somehow he had a blind spot for knight b3, because I am of course looking at the computer now. And he says after knight b3 that anything is winning here, basically for black. And I'm just trying to understand what he might have missed. Like Valle went bishop e6, but also if you just take on a1, for example, black just picked up an exchange and the compensation is not clear. Not clear to me and to the engine. So bishop e6, he didn't even take the rook on a1. Rook d1 takes, and now the point is if c takes d4, there's knight takes d4. And this is probably even worse than an exchange, because these pawns will just start rolling down the board. So knight takes c4, and now Valle found b5. Queen takes b5. If take here, then bishop c4 will again win the exchange. Queen takes b5, rook b8, queen a4, d takes d3, and c2 will be coming. And it seems like white has no defense against that. Yeah, c2 on the board. Even rook c8. So, well, that would be winning as well. I'm pretty sure. Just to pick up the exchange. But he went rook c8, and after takes, now c1 is an even bigger threat when he would be a piece up at the end of the day. Rook c1, takes, and even though material is equal after queen d8, queen b5, queen d1, queen f1, rook d8, he resigned because this pawn on c2 is just too strong. Can you name your top 3 grandmasters, someone you look up to, etc.? The great question. Well, Magnus Carlsen is definitely one candidate, since he's well, I grew up with him being kind of the best player all the time. Like if you were born earlier than me, like in Kasparov's era, I'm sure you would see things a little bit different. But for me personally, I grew up with Magnus being the best, so I'm kind of the opinion that he's probably the best player of all time. So that definitely makes me look up to him. Other than him, I'm trying to think. On numerous occasions, I said that I really admire Michael Adams' style, grandmaster from England. Michael Adams, who nowadays I'm sure people will not really know him that much, but his peak rating was like 2770. He was a top player for many years, and I always really admired his very positional style. And apart from that, I also really enjoyed many of Veselin Topalov's games, who also doesn't play a lot of chess nowadays anymore. But he had many great games as well. Probably an answer which you don't hear quite often, Michael Adams and Veselin Topalov. But yeah, who are your favorite top 3 chess players, guys? I'm curious. Yeah, Adam's nickname is the Spider. I'm not entirely sure how that happened, how people named him the Spider, but I heard that before. Yeah, Shankland had 2 tough games now in a row, as you said. He lost to Vincent yesterday, where he had quite good drawing chances. So, how much rate it would be, Davesh? Devesh, what exactly do you mean? Rate for what exactly? So yeah, we went through all of the games now. It still seems like Vincent is trying to win this, but his pawn structure is weak and White's king is quite active, so it seems like that should be heading towards a draw. Because he weaves positional webs on the chessboard. I like that explanation. That's also what I admire about him, his very positional style. Which books can you recommend? This is the 3rd day I'm pulling this book up, but it's still next to me here, Maneuvering the Art of Peace Play. I hope you guys can see it. By Mark Dvoretsky. Mark Dvoretsky is one of my favorite chess book authors. You can basically buy any book of him, and I'm sure you'll like it, because all of them are just very good. What's the rate for my upcoming Nimzo Rogozin Chessable course? I don't know yet. That's not up to me. That's up to the Chessable team to decide at the end of the day. So yeah, that game seems like it's heading towards a draw. Also, Prague against Aravind ended in a draw as well. Yeah, Dvoretsky's books are great. So if you're looking for material to step up your game, I definitely recommend you look into that. So next game, actually last game from the Masters we're gonna go through is Giri against Nguyen. And Giri played knight f3, d5, and b3, which we also saw in the World Championship match. And Nguyen went for c5. By the way, just to give you guys a quick reminder, in the World Championship match, this is something which Ding Liren played against Gukesh. And here he had this idea to go after bishop f5, bishop e2. Now if e6, his idea was knight h4. So Gukesh went h6, and now Ding Liren played this move bishop a3 to get e6, bishop takes f8, when Black has to lose some time for getting his king into safety. I think Gukesh replied by knight d7 to be able to capture with the knight. I think that's how the game went. And later on it ended in a draw. But Giri, well, Nguyen had different plans. He went c5, e3, and now e6. And now, in fact, we have a position which I recommend in my video in my 1d4 repertoire, which you can find on YouTube. So it's nice to see Geary go for that as well. Nice to see Geary going for that as well. Yeah, I mean, e6, I'm a bit surprised. Usually you would also start with knight f6. Well, there's nothing wrong with this move for e6, but just a bit surprising. If black goes knight c6, I assume Geary wants to go bishop b5, and then he has an imzo with this extra move b3. For sure, not an advantage for white either, but nowadays people are just trying to get a sort of playable position. Yeah. Who is a better content creator, in my opinion, Levi Rosman or Daniel Naroditsky? Honestly, I haven't watched a lot of content from either of them, especially from Naroditsky. I always love to follow Naroditsky's commentary. He's one of the best commentators out there, I believe, at least in my opinion. Always love to see his commentary, but I haven't watched him on YouTube that much. Same applies for Levi. I like his commentary, but also haven't watched that many videos by him on YouTube. But I love that Levi just explains many chess concepts in a very simple way to players who just started off playing chess. So and he does that extremely well, of course. Stream delay is so bad for me. I hope it's not on my end. Hope everything is working well with the stream on my end. My top student, well, student, maybe not the right way to call, but I did work for, or I am still working for Grandmaster Pentala Hari Krishna, so that's definitely the top person I'm working for. Yeah, his commentary is really enjoyable. Naroditsky, one of my favorite ones. Other than him, I really enjoy watching Peter Lecko commentate. I also loved the combination of Gustafsson and Svidler back in the day. Some of you guys saw that, but that's unfortunately already quite a long time ago since they commented together. Yeah, they're on a different spectrum, entertaining versus educational. I guess Levi is more on the entertaining spectrum, but I think Levi combines it quite well. Like it's not like it's only entertainment. Like he also puts in a lot of information in his videos, which I like. Okay, you're in America, so there's naturally some delay. All right. So Queen A5 check, quite interesting. Nguyen spent a lot of time here for this line. So again, check out my video on 1d4, since even a player like Nguyen, who is one of the who is a very renowned theoretician, is spending time on this line here, and play the move Queen A5, which does look a little bit mysterious. So he's provoking C3, but the Queen on A5 is just a little bit out. A little bit out of the game. Instead of c3, I guess after bishop d2, now after something like queen b6 or even queen d8, the bishop is just misplaced on d2. Queen d8 would be a bit too much, but something like queen b6, for example. Bishop would, of course, much rather prefer to be here on b2. So Geary went c3, knight f6, short castle, bishop e7, bishop b2, castle, knight d2, quite logical, queen c7, and now queen e2. Now perhaps, well, queen e2 is a very logical move. I'm just thinking if c4 now would be an idea, and black kind of lost the move with queen a5. Oh, of course, c3 also had to be played, but I'm not sure that the queen is placed so well on c7 here. Like cd, ed, b6 is the typical reaction, but now the queen is on the c file, which black doesn't really want to have. What's the last film I watched? I don't watch that many movies. I sometimes watch some Netflix, even though now I just canceled my subscription again, just because I don't have enough time to watch many things. I watch a lot of documentaries on YouTube quite often, lots of podcasts, but the last movie I watched, that was already some time ago. Perhaps something on Netflix, maybe The Equalizer or something like that. I really don't remember that. Quite sure it was something on Netflix. So queen e2, c takes d4. Maybe d takes e5, c4 would be more effective. Yeah, that's also one idea. After queen c7, that's the top engine recommendation. D takes c5, bishop takes c5, and now c4. And now white has this idea of bishop takes f6. So d takes c4 would look logical. Now either bishop c4 or knight c4 both make a lot of sense. And it seems like white is probably keeping some pressure here, but also black is quite solid. Like bishop d7 would come, rook c8, rook d8. Also not that clear. So Giri wanted to stay more flexible. Queen e2, c takes d4, e takes d4, and now a5. Usually I would prefer not to take here because after cd ed, it opens the e file for white. And often white has now ideas to attack with knight e5 followed by f4. So I might prefer to even go a5 first if you even want to go a5. b6 is kind of the logical way of playing. Maybe Van thought about e4 here, d takes e4, knight takes e4. And now if knight takes e4, queen takes e4 might be unpleasant because of this threat on h7. But black probably doesn't have to take something like c takes d4 perhaps. And black seems to be doing okay. So not sure what he disliked about b6, but he took here. I'm just thinking maybe b6, d takes e5, he was worried, and if b takes e5 now e4. But not clear what white is playing for here. Because after e5, black will simply go back with the knight. Something like a5 perhaps, and then a4. So he took cd, ed, and now a5, a4, and b6. Rook e1 and bishop b7. Yeah, instead of rook e1, I might think about knight e5, but takes, and knight d7, and it seems like black is in time to organize counterplay with knight c5, and then knight takes and bishop a6, for example. So rook e1, and here he played bishop a3. By the way, I see a very instructive idea by the engine here. So small question to you guys. Since I spent quite a lot of time collecting training material on the topic of regrouping your knights and in general your pieces, how would you improve your position here? The first thing that I would notice here is that either knight e5 is kind of the only idea you would have with this knight here. c4 is kind of a break which you don't necessarily want to do just yet because black will always have knight b4. And then the pawns will probably be more weak than anything else. So what could be one idea for white here? As I said, I already saw the idea by the engine, but what would you think to regroup a piece for white? Knight on d2, yeah? What about the knight on d2? So you're pointing out that knight could go to f1, e3. That would be one idea. So Giri also did play rook e1. So knight f1 to e3 would be one idea, but then the question is where does the knight go from here? And I already see that that a couple of people pointed it out. Knight b1 is a very nice idea here. And I really love this plan. White is going to a3 and then to b5. So because if you look at the structure, white has basically two outposts here. The first one would be e5, even though it's not a clear outpost, because black could theoretically kick it out with f6. But the square on b5 is actually quite a big outpost, because black can never kick out the knight with any pawns. So knight b1 is quite a nice idea here. Of course, it will not like win the game on the spot, but white might be able to secure a nice long-term advantage here. For example, bishop b7, knight a3, and might be advisable even for black to go knight a7 to not allow knight b5. Like if black plays something logical like rook c8, knight b5, queen b8, and now all of a sudden look at this beautiful knight on b5. And I might prepare knight e5 very slowly. Like rook a e1 would be a typical plan. to keep this rook on the f file. Because often when I play knight e5, I want to follow it up by f4. And then all of a sudden things could become quite unpleasant for black. So that's quite an instructive plan. Knight b1, a3 to b5. But Giri went rook e1, bishop b7, and bishop a3, which is also quite often an idea. I mean, it kind of is like this, that the bishop on d3 is the good bishop for white, and the bishop on b2 is kind of the bad bishop. And for black, it's the opposite. This bishop on e7 is more active, and the bishop on b7 is quite passive in general. So Giri went bishop a3, takes, and now knight b8, an idea which I like very much, because now, as we see, black is exchanging this more passive bishop against white's more active bishop. Takes, knight e5, queen b7, and now white doesn't have enough firepower on the queen side, because this bishop is just missing, and any attack for white would simply be too slow. Like, for example, now g4, it's not clear where this is going. Like, black could maybe play knight d7 just. Oh, whoops. Knight on a6 is hanging. I missed that. Let's say knight b8, for example, and if g5, just you could go knight d7, and without the bishop on d3, nothing will happen here on the king side. So rook c2 was played, knight b8, knight b1, and now actually Giri is going for the same plan. Knight b1, a3. Knight came to b5, h6, g3, and knight e4. Possibly with the idea of getting knight d6 next. I was thinking about the same with knight e8 as well. That might be a similar idea as it happened in the game. c4, queen d7, queen d3, g6, h4, h5, and I assume that here players went for a repetition. So here the game ended in a draw. Black can never take on c4 because the knight on e4 would be hanging, and white can also not really move here, because if he takes on d5, probably white would be the only one to be risking here, because he would be stuck with this isolated pawn, even though this should also be a draw as well. And c5 will also never work because this pawn is just hanging. So therefore players decided to go for a draw here. So any other games you guys want to have a look at, perhaps in the challenger section? So let me know which games could be of interest to you. Also in the open section, if you guys have some games you want me to have a look at, or some general questions in general. Now would be a nice time to ask stuff if you have questions in the opening, for example. Time for any questions you might have. So still 3 games ongoing in the challengers. Already 1 game finished, Salgado. Yakuboev playing against Joachim Nemetz. Looks like a very complicated game here. Looks very complicated. Let's see how we got there. Give me one moment. All right, so let's have a look. e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6. Have we reviewed the decisive game yet? Decisive game in the Masters section or in the Challengers? All right, so bishop b5, e6, castle 97, and he went for this line. Quite popular line here. Black has this sort of hedgehog here with the knight on g6, and black in general, my apologies, will go for something like f5 to open up this diagonal for the bishop on b7. f4, knight a5, bishop c3, so black is playing quite provocatively here, provoking e5. Queen e2, knight h4, which I like very much, regrouping the knight to f5. Bishop f2, d5, e takes, knight takes d6, and seems like black has equalized more or less comfortably here. Also f4 can be sometimes quite a weakness as well. Many pieces left the board, and now we reach this sort of endgame, but still still queens on the board. And white's king is somewhat weak in this position. Yakoboev playing for win here, pushing his pawns on the king side, on the queen side. And finally a5 happened. B takes a5, queen a7. So now things are truly escalating here. The position is still objectively equal, but anything can basically happen here, in my opinion. How about advice on chess psychology? Was there a change in your mindset which was crucial for your chess improvement on its own? Great question. I have to think about that one. For me, it was always like this, that simply when I'm doing well, I'm also feeling good psychologically, and the other way around is, of course, when it doesn't go as well. So for me, it was always like, if I have kind of a good run, then all things are just seeming to be in place for me. I'm wondering what happens after the move queen b2 here. What am I missing? Black has queen d1, because if white is able to trade queens here, then it's most likely game over, because these pawns will just decide the game. But black has to keep queens on the board to have some counterplay against the white king. On what other phase do GMs spend their time apart from finding new ideas in the opening? That very much depends on the player, I think. Also, what are their weaknesses? Like, everyone has to work on different things. But nowadays, most time goes into opening preparation, since many things can be decided in the opening. Simply, if you have a large advantage after the opening, it becomes very hard for the opponent to do anything, even if they're a much stronger player from understanding wise. Alireza, MVL, Maurizio, and Procro will be a strong France Olympia team. Yeah, they would, if they all play. Like in the past Olympiads, we saw that in the past Olympiad, both MVL and Alireza didn't compete because of a lack of money, I think was the main reason. But if they would play, they would be one of the contenders for sure. Revo, good night. I'm glad you joined the stream. I hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, have a good night, man. Hopefully see you soon. With me, it is that I always try to play for win, but recently I realized that solidity and patience also bring results, especially some people say that with black, no one should play to equalize. Yeah, it's great that you point that out as well. I think when I became stronger, I also realized that you don't really have to do that much in every game to generate chances. Like, you don't have to do anything crazy quite often to win a game. Like, in most cases, players are gonna make mistakes on their own, even on the grandmaster level. Like, if you get a position where you understand the plans quite well and make your natural moves, developing your pieces to the squares where they belong. Of course, it sounds easier than it actually is, but you get the point. You're gonna get some chances. Does the federation cover the Olympiad expenses, like the stay, flight, etc.? The Austrian federation does, and the players also get a compensation for playing. Which, yeah, you won't get rich from that alone. But it is nice to be compensated for the games. But everything is covered, so we don't have any expenses and earn some money from that. So perhaps we see a repetition of moves here, but perhaps not. Like, for example, queen c1, queen e3. That would be one possible way that the game concludes. Who was your chess trainer when you were aiming for GM title, or you did it on your own without a coach? I remember when I was close to becoming grandmaster, I was working with Markus Raga quite often, Austrian #1. And at that time, I was also working with Polish grandmaster Wojciech Moranda. Those were the two main people, I think. I also had lessons with Artur Yusupov, by the way. The Austrian Federation also organized that. That was already quite a few years ago, like in 2016, 2017. But that was very, very instructive as well. I learned a lot there. How often do you play at Haus des Schachsports? I recently saw you there. You were playing black, and I think it was a French, but not sure. Yeah, I do sometimes play there. So for all of you who are not from Vienna, in Vienna there's one building which is purely for chess. It's also where the Viennese Chess Federation has their base, basically. And there are some tournaments or leagues being held there. I don't play there that often, simply because there are not many interesting tournaments for me in Vienna to play. But I do sometimes play in the local league, where there's a nice sponsor there. It's the Betriebsliga, which is played on Wednesday at 6:30 p.m., which is quite a historic league. It's been played already for 100 years. But as you also said, the Schachhaus itself is not a great place to play. There are better places to play chess. But still, at least it's great to have something like this. Like, I don't think that there is like a compound in many cities where you can meet up to play chess and to organize leagues. So this is a critique on a very high level. Like, I think we in Vienna can already be very fortunate that there is a place like that, honestly. Which city in Austria do you live in? It is a really beautiful country. I want to travel to Innsbruck someday. Seems like a beautiful city. Yeah, Innsbruck is great. I personally live in Vienna, which is the capital. But Innsbruck is one of my favorite cities in Austria as well. I've been there sometimes. Innsbruck is great. You're like surrounded by a lot of mountains. Very historic city. And we do have of course, we have a lot of mountains here, a lot of different beautiful lakes. We don't have access to the sea in Austria, unfortunately. Not anymore, at least. With previous borders, we did have access in modern day Italy, I think it is, which was part of Austria a couple of many years ago. So that game can definitely bring some more surprises. Very interesting. Otherwise, Mark Kuhn against Bjerre ended in a theoretical draw, more or less. This is the so-called Breyer variation. Here white can already repeat with knight g5, knight f3, which is kind of unpleasant for black if he wants to play for a win. But Mark Kuhn tried some theoretical stuff here with knight g5. Seems like he was prepared for all of the time, basically. Knight f7, queen b3. So he did sacrifice a piece here and now went for the repetition of moves. d5 would look logical, but it seems like queen b7 is crushing, and then c7, c8. So white could even play on here with a piece down, but knight f3, for example, threading knight h4. But it seems like here black is escaping, so he did go for the repetition here. King e8 would also be possible. I'm just seeing. That would also be an option for black to perhaps keep on playing. I feel like anyone could just cheat in the bathroom with a phone because there are no anti-cheating actions there. Are you also a bit concerned about that? Yeah, for sure. You could say the same about most tournaments in general, that there are simply no anti-cheating measures. At least on the more amateur level. Like if you compete in some more international tournaments, then there are some things in place, but also that is not nearly enough. Like even in the European Individual Championship, in the last one I played, there's just one scan basically, and that's just it. So I'm sure it would be possible to cheat there. So I'm not happy at all with anti-cheating measures in general. It's simply not enough. And I'm quite sure there are many cases which go unnoticed. Who's your favorite chess photographer? Mine has to be David Lada. Yeah, David Lada is one of the best for sure. There's also the the lady from, I think she's from Russia. What is her name again? She's also streaming regularly. Emilianova, I think. She also does amazing photography. I think her last name is Emilianova, if I'm not wrong. By the way, this game Salgado played played quite an aggressive move on the fourth move already with g4, which is quite a common idea in general. But yeah, so we got kind of a completely fresh position from the start here. House of Shashpat is a different breed though, yeah. I tend to agree, but again, as I said, I already appreciated quite a lot that we at least do have a compound to even play chess, because again, this is not something which is a standard thing. Like I don't know any city other than Vienna now on the spot that does have a place like that. Emilianova, yeah, exactly. That's her. What's her first name? I forgot that right now. Emilianova. Huh. If you say the first name, I will surely remember it, but right now I somehow can't recall it. Yeah, David seems really nice. Haven't met him in person, haven't spoken to him in person, but from what I can tell, definitely. Can Hans become world champion someday? What do you think? Yeah, that's a difficult question to answer. Maria, yeah, Maria Emilianova, yeah. Definitely check out her stuff as well. She does a lot of streaming as well, and her photography is fantastic too. Yeah, yeah, Paul. Thanks for pointing that out. Maria is her first name. So yeah, can Hans become world champion? Don't get me wrong. Hans is surely, as even Magnus said in the podcast, that Hans became a very strong player. There's no doubt about that, but you simply have to look at the other players as well. Like you have to look at Gukesh, you have to look at Pragnananda, you have to look at Firouzja, Abdusattorov, Erigaisi, all of them. So can Hans compete with them at the end of the day? That's the question you have to answer. I think he can definitely compete with them. I don't think there's a question about that. But to become a world champion at the end of the day, it's a whole different level of difficulty. How is Giri doing this tournament? 5 games, 5 draws. I'll not make any jokes about that now. When will you play over the board again? I'll play in the European Individual Championship, which starts in 2 weeks. That will be my next event. So very interesting structure, kind of King's Indian structure, but already White has advanced his pawns on the king side. And e5, quite a committal move, but otherwise I guess that Black will play e5 himself. So e5, knight f5. Yeah, Black looks to be quite comfortable here. Knight on f5 is very strong. Played king f1. Why not knight e4 right away? Because of the queen c7, this pawn might be in trouble. So now he played knight e4 with the idea that now queen c7, perhaps there is no knight takes f3 check. Like bishop c1 might be his idea, knight e5 and bishop f4 now. And now there is no knight f3 with check. So king f1, quite a nice prophylactical move. b5, bishop c1, c4, and knight h2. So he's going fully for the attack here. Knight takes e5, I assume again bishop f4 might have been his idea with this pin here. Giri always makes a draw. Don't make fun of my boy Giri. Don't make fun of Giri. So yeah, king h8, knight g4, and all of a sudden it seems like White has quite the attack here. Knight f6, yeah, if Black would take, gf6, and all of the pieces are joining the attack. Also the bishop is probably just trapped down. So he played knight e5, queen h5, and now he took on f6 so that he can give back the piece. queen g5, and knight d5 now. Knight takes e4 would look quite logical as well. Queen takes d8, and if rook takes d8, d takes e4, I guess he didn't like the bishop coming into f4 and e5 or even to g5 and f6. That's understandable. Again, the computer points out knight g3 is okay here, fg, and now rook d8. But also doesn't look clear at all. Bishop f4, and again, bishop e5 could be there. So yeah. Any movie recommendations? I can give you one, which also has quite a lot to do with chess, actually. It's the documentary film. It's about an hour long, about a big match in the board game Go, with the first neural network beating a human in a match. That was the match was in 2016, maybe something like that. Again, I don't recall the exact name of the documentary film, but if you type in a Go documentary film, I'm sure you're gonna find it. That was a very nice documentary. So what exactly happened here? Knight d5, and now queen takes d8, rook takes d8, and bishop g5. And all of a sudden, apparently white has some pressure here. He's still a pawn down, but yeah, all of the pieces are joining the action. Also, black has a lot of issues along the dark squares here. Apart from chess, I loved the James Bond series. Favorite one of them, either Skyfall or Casino Royale. Those two are my favorites. AlphaGo, yeah. AlphaGo was the name of the documentary. Thanks, Kareem, for pointing that out. So yeah, bishop g5, knight f6 now, and all of a sudden, black king got into some trouble. And still, black is not a pawn up anymore. So white's pieces came into the game, and black's king is still in some trouble here. It's always some threats. Rook h6 is not checkmate yet, but still, king doesn't have a lot of squares to go to. And now it seems like, again, some mating patterns are there. And these pawns are also quite far advanced. d4 with the threat of d5, d6, so he gave the piece, but still, after knight b3, he resigned because rook b3 and b6. So Maurizi seems to be winning against Divya Deshmukh. He had a more pleasant position after the opening right away against this IQP. And it seems like Divya might have been solid enough for most of the game. Like, you could easily imagine black holding this, but it will be quite an unpleasant and long suffering for black, just because of the weakness of the pawn on d5. And I think that Divya was defending very well for a long time, if we go a bit further, but still there's some pressure. And yeah, again, pawn on d5 is kind of a long-term target. So rook came to a5, again, targeting this pawn. And even though it seems like this endgame is a draw, black, of course, still has to be quite careful here. g5, takes. And knight g6 is already the decisive blunder, it seems. King c4 probably holds a draw. King f4, funny idea, because you cannot take b5. It's probably winning. But, oof, knight g6 and this. And if king f6, d4. And this is a draw, I guess. Yeah, both players are queening at the same time and draw. So I found the human there being a bit arrogant, not believing he lost, even though it clearly happened with chess quite some time ago. You mean the Go player? I think he's from South Korea. He's considered one of the best players of all time in Go. Well, he was feeling severe pressure, but also because no one believed that a computer could beat a Go player. That was simply how it was conceived back then. Giri is probably the only player in history to have 50% score with no win or loss in the candidates. That could easily be, yeah. I also cannot think of anyone else right now to have achieved that result. Places to check out in Vienna. Well, there are so many. If you like some cultural things, there are many museums here. You can check out like an opera or a concert, like with not concert, but like a musical or stuff like that. You can simply walk around the old town. It's like the old city, like the center of the city. Many cool things to see there. Yeah, even in the most 0.0 position, there's a lot of play here. Like, for example, here, computer will say that it's 0.00, but if we look at it, it becomes quite obvious that black is the one that has to be quite careful here. Like, if white wants to make a draw, he has many ways to do so. AlphaZero, the strongest chess engine? Probably, but most likely we will never really know because they stopped the AlphaZero project, so I don't think we'll see any more AlphaZero games, at least in the near future. So knight g6 and now king d4 already. So black needed to stop that with king c4. And oh, one more chance here. f2 apparently is the way to draw. Knight f2, king b4. But yeah, that's super tough to hold. Perhaps king c3. And yeah, black is barely making a draw, it seems. Knight f4 blunder. And king d3, knight e6, g6. And now we have sort of a similar position, just that the pawn is already on g6. Bring the knight to f5 and knight g3. Typical idea, because if black takes, then g7 and g8 will win. King e7, and here it seems like Divya resigned because of the knight g7, king f7 will trap the knight. Do you use Lila engines when you're working on openings? Yeah, I do, quite often. Even though nowadays they also implemented some neural features in Stockfish, but still I like to have Lila running if I'm analyzing something seriously. So we do have quite an update in the game, Yakuboev against Nemeth. It seems like Yakuboev is winning all of a sudden. Again, as I said before, anything can happen in this game. After queen g2, he went knight h5, which might already be small in accuracy. I'm just thinking what happens after a2 here. Also losing because of b7. So black has a couple of moves that show 0-0, but none of them are totally obvious. Like queen c1 attacking this pawn is one of the moves. And here, queen c1 apparently is a blunder. Knight g6 is the only move to hold the balance. But also here, some incredible mess will ensue. b8 takes, knight g2, king g2, and computer says this is a draw, but also not obvious at all. Like white is basically a piece up, yeah? I don't really understand that. So we went queen c1, knight f8, king g8, knight e6, and now b7. Bishop g7, and here it's Yakuboev to move. Seems like there are some ways to win. Bishop e2 is the best, as it seems, followed by b8 queen. Like the stream, guys. Thank you, Niels. It's great to have you back in the stream. Hope you enjoyed. So a1 queen, I guess you will just take, yeah. And this pawn will decide the game. So it looks like Yakuboev is gonna win. And also the stream is slowly coming to an end. We've been streaming for almost 2 hours now. So if you have any more questions, definitely let me know right away that I can answer them. I'm just gonna have a brief look into the open section as well. And Druska made quite a quick draw against Jegos Pechac. So we see a couple of draws here. One more game is ongoing. Thomas Bertson with black. We got a London system here. Quite a typical position for the London. No, Pnui, I don't mind you for testing. Don't worry about it. Thank you for doing that. Kartik, have you followed the games from Airflood Open? I would like to do that, but I don't see any place to follow the games. So that's kind of my issue. I don't see any website that transmits the live games. So looks like Thomas Bertson just outplayed his opponent. Okay. Not gonna go into that too much. Black won a piece, and for some reason White is still playing this on, which I find kind of strange. Like at the end of the day, he's a full piece down and a pawn. So usually you would resign around here, especially here. Yeah, I don't see why you would play on. Also knight g5. He could have played king f4 and then rook h2 is checkmate on the next move, basically. Okay. Yeah. So the Masters, Vincent Keimer also agreed on a draw with Le Quang Liam. So all the games finished in a draw except for Shankland against Vailly. Vailly managed to win that game. And that puts us to the standings. So Prague and Aravind are sharing first place with 3.5 out of 5. Then we have 4 players on 50%, Vailly, Le Quang Liam, Vincent Keimer, and Anish Giri. And 4 players on -1, which are Navarro, Shankland, Nguyen, and Edis Gurel. If you like art, definitely visit the permanent exhibition of the Albertina. And if you like animals, the Schönbrunn Zoo has giant pandas who are very cute. Can definitely agree on that. It's funny that you mentioned that. I read the newspaper today. I usually read the weekend newspaper. And they pointed out that there is like a very nice exhibition in the Albertina currently, which I also really want to have a look at. Like they will exhibit some paintings by Van Gogh, I think, and a new up-and-coming artist, which has like a mix between Van Gogh's art and also some Asian art. That's what I heard. The artist is from Canada, I believe. So I really want to go there to the Albertina. Who do you think has a higher ceiling from the young players? Nordirbeck, Alireza, Keimer, Prague, or Gukesh? Yeah, hard to say. I mean, they're slowly reaching an age where you could make some predictions. Alireza already has the sort of disadvantage that he already reached this 2800 plus level. I'm not sure if it's a disadvantage. It could also be an advantage for him, of course. But he has been, I would say, struggling a little bit. He also didn't play that much classical Alireza in the past months or even years. And when it comes to the others, I think that Nordirbeck for sure will hit 2800. Gukesh as well. Prague also, I'm quite certain. And Keimer most likely. Well, Keimer, I'm not sure. As much as I like Keimer and as much of a great player he is, he might reach 2800. It will be hard to say right now for me. But like for example, Abdusatorov and Gukesh as well are just way closer to 2800 already than Vincent is. Vincent still needs to gain some 70 points to go there, which is a lot, especially on this rating as well. But I certainly hope for all of these guys to reach that, of course. Like if you look at the amount of work they put in, it would be nice to see that pay off like that. So everyone, we're gonna finish the stream around here. Again, I hope you enjoyed today's stream. Tomorrow we will have a rest day for the Prague Masters, so I think I'm also gonna have one rest day from streaming. I might do an upload tomorrow about not sure yet what, but you guys gave me some nice suggestions about possible videos in the near future. So again, I hope you guys enjoyed the stream. If you did, you can also check out my Discord server. If you want to stay in the loop a bit more, you can just head to my YouTube bio and you'll be able to find a link there to join my Discord server. And otherwise, I'm gonna see you in the following days. So yeah, can you do the thing I sent in DMs before you end the stream, please? Yeah, absolutely. I'm just gonna head there right away. All right. We're just setting up the whole streaming business so that I can stream better in the near future. But I'm gonna do that while the stream is still running, but you don't need to stay there for that. So I'm gonna close it off for today. So again, thank you guys for watching. The stream will still be ongoing, but I'm gonna disable my camera. So thank you all so much for making the stream very enjoyable, and I'm gonna see you soon. Thank you, everyone.